And welcome, Hoosier fans, to another victorious episode of the Assembly Call. Tonight, your Indiana Hoosiers hung on for a 71-68 win against Maryland in a game that was at times pretty, at times sloppy, at times, and by at times I mean most of the time, incredibly poorly officiated. But IU made enough plays late on the back of Juwan Morgan, who was fantastic again, was uncertain whether he would play, and not only did he play, he starred in the game and did a fantastic job. So we'll touch more on him as we go. I'm your host, Andy Bottoms, here with Ryan Phillips, and we're going to break the game down for you on this edition of the Assembly Call IU Postgame Show. And let's start tonight's show as we start every show, and that is with our Hoosier Proud banner moment. And for me, it could be any number of moments with Juwan Morgan, but he has to be the centerpiece. I mean, the one I'll give will be, again, he factored prominently in an offensive rebound of a free throw miss. With IU up 67-66 with under a minute left. Josh Newkirk was at the line, missed both free throws, but the second kind of hung on the rim just long enough that Juwan could work his way in to get the rebound, put it right back up, and extended the lead to 69-66. Maryland was able to get a basket from there, but IU, Newkirk hit his next two free throws and let IU pull away. But it was really, that was every time IU really needed a bucket in the second half. Juwan Morgan was the guy to provide it. He scored almost half of the team's points in the second half, 14 points of the 29. IU scored 5 of 7 from the floor, 4 of 5 from the free throw line in that half, and just made big play after big play throughout the game. And for a guy who, again, we didn't know if he would be able to play coming in, played 36 minutes, I think sat out just about a minute of the second half and led the team with 25 points and just was fantastic. Also led the team in assists. So, certainly his play and really that play was emblematic of how IU scrapped. They really, while the second half was ugly, I thought they played well defensively. And he was, a guy consistently in the middle of that, had a number of nice blocks and defensive plays. And, just that kind of scrappy play to come up with a rebound off a missed free throw in a key spot to give IU a really big home win, bouncing back off that Michigan State loss. Just a really big game for IU, and it was a big game for Maryland. They clearly came in. It was, understanding they really needed a road win. They're on the bubble at this point in the NCAA tournament, and IU to be able to hold them off in a tough game at home was certainly a big one. And Juwan Morgan, in delivering the banner moment with that rebound basket off a missed free throw to not quite put the game away, but essentially do so, was the banner moment from my perspective. So our banner moment, as always, is brought to you by our friends at Hoosier Proud, an Indiana-based t-shirt and apparel company that is by Hoosiers for Hoosiers. So why should you check out their website, HoosierProud.com? Well, here are 3 reasons. Number 1, their designs. Hoosier Proud has officially licensed IU gear, as well as a bunch of really cool and interesting designs that are inspired by unique elements of the Hoosier State. Plus, they are the official provider of our Assembly Call logo shirts. Number 2, their philanthropy. Hoosier Proud donates a portion of their revenue from their t-shirt sales to specific Indiana-based charities. And the number 3 reason to visit HoosierProud.com is their generosity, where you can get 15% off by using the promo code ASSEMBLY. So you get 15% off, again, of your entire purchase. So whether that's Assembly Call logo shirts, IU licensed shirts, they've got some AJ Moye shirts on there, 15% off that entire purchase by using the promo code ASSEMBLY. So make sure you check them out at HoosierProud.com. All right, let's move the ball, find the open man, and get some opening thoughts on the rest of our team, which for now is Ryan Phillips, but Jared may be joining us here in a little while. So, Ryan, I'll kick it to you for your rant, which is brought to us by thebiglead.com.
Yeah, I think that really, I mean, we're going to talk about the game, and this game certainly deserves some focus, but I think it's just time to step back real quick and look at the Big Ten standings. Indiana's 5-3, which puts them in a tie for 5th place, a half game behind Michigan in 4th. A couple weeks ago, if you had said that's where they'd be, I think everybody would have been really happy with that. I mean, you win a home game against Maryland, a team that, with Juwan Morgan healthy, you probably should beat. But the thing is, they took care of business. And in the first half, it really looked like they struggled defensively, gave up 39 points, really ratcheted it down, locked it down in the second half. I thought they played very well. Look, they got out rebounded by 11. But what they did, they made up for it by doing the little things. They had 10 steals. They had 8 blocks. as a team. You know, this is a team without a lot of size. Josh Newkirk had 3 blocks. Jawan Morgan had 2. Justin Smith had 1. Devontae Green had 2. That means they're hustling when guys are finishing at the rim. They're making it so it's not easy. The fact that they got out rebounded by 11 and then only shot 9 of 16 from the free throw line, which is 56%, which is just unacceptable, and we're still able to pull out a win, tells you the team was hustling and playing hard. And you saw in a couple of those sequences late, diving on the floor, scrapping, getting back. You know, Josh Newkirk had 4 turnovers, but the team only had 12. But Josh Newkirk had 4 turnovers, but I'll give him credit. A couple times he turned the ball over and got back on defense and made a stop or forced a turnover. I mean, you know, it's okay to make a mistake if you can recover from it and make it so it doesn't, hurt the team. And really, I don't think that a lot of their mistakes in this game did hurt the team. To hold Maryland to 68 points when they scored 39 in the first half is excellent. And so I think that, again, you're starting to see what Archie Miller wants out of his teams. And it's this hard-nosed, scrappy play where you win with defense, and whatever you get on the offensive end is it's not a bonus, but you feel like, there's not as much pressure to score every time down. I'd also like to give credit to Josh Smith. I thought he played really well in my opening. Justin Smith, I'm sorry. Yeah, Josh Smith was the Indiana commit who wound up not going to Indiana.
Yeah, let it go, man. It's been far too many years.
I know. I always think of him when I think of Justin Smith. But I will say this: Indiana 6 of 18 from 3, but there were 28 of 56 from the field, so 50% shooting. If you're playing at Assembly Hall, you're likely going to win if you hit 50% from the field and don't turn the ball over. And they only turned the ball over 12 times. I say only. There were 3 in the first half and 9 in the second half. But you felt like, again, in the second half, when they were turning the ball over, they weren't letting it hurt them. So that's big.
Yeah, I would agree. I mean, so let's talk second half, briefly. I thought what you did. I thought Maryland was able to get pretty comfortable, and they hit some tough shots certainly in the first half. But I thought that was one of the bigger takeaways. It felt like IU was playing well and just kind of gave away some chances to maybe extend a lead in the first half, let Maryland get comfortable, let them get hot from the outside. But in the second half, they really ratcheted up the defense, like you said. Cowan finished with 6 turnovers. I think the majority of those were, all of those were in the second half, at least based on the box score that I'm looking at. So they harassed their, point guard and leading scorer into 6 turnovers. Herder had a couple. I think he had 4 or 5 for the game. And then IU forced Maryland into 11 turnovers in the second half in total. And that was one of the things, that coming into the game, it seemed like a big area of advantage for IU, with both the fact that IU hasn't turned the ball over at a high rate. Maryland has not forced turnovers at a high rate, but Maryland has turned the ball over a lot. And so I thought those were big. I mean, did you see any adjustments that they made in the second half to force those turnovers, or was it just being a little bit more dialed in?
I think just they were more aggressive on the ball without fouling. They were more extending the defense beyond the 3-point line. They mucked up some passing lanes, because you saw there were a couple times Maryland just threw the ball out of bounds, and it was more just having pressure in the passing lanes. There was a lot of help and recover, and that actually hurt them a few times. I mean, Colin Hartman, I mentioned this on Twitter a few times. Colin Hartman got caught in help, and his recovery was late, and guys had wide open threes as a result, with Hartman closing out at him. But at the same time, I feel like there was a real effort to help and recover and really make some stuff happen on that help. And I think that help caused a lot of turnovers, because guys weren't sure where it was coming from. So they drive into the middle, and the help would come, not necessarily from the strong side where they expected it to. It would come from the other side, or it would, not leave them an easy out. It would come from a rotation. And the key when you help is everybody else rotating over and helping you out if you're the help man. And Indiana was doing that really well. The problem was, a few times Maryland found the open guy, instead of going to the easy side pass, they would find the open guy who was the last guy to who was being guarded by the last guy to rotate over, find him, and he would be open for a 3. But I thought for the most part, Indiana did a really good job with that. And I thought they, when you do that, you put pressure on the ball handler to make the right decision, and you're putting pressure on the offense to withstand that. And I thought they did, and I thought that was really the key in the second half, was making Maryland make tough decisions and make tough reads, as opposed to just giving them the easy out all the time. And I'll say this: I really love seeing Indiana force shot clock violations, and we've seen more of those this year than we have in the past 5 years combined. It feels like so. Just running teams down late clock is really something this team has started doing consistently.
Yeah, I thought the ball pressure was a lot better, particularly on Cowan. I mean, there was a play in the first half.
Yeah, what did he get in the second? He had 2 points in the second half, I think.
Yeah,
maybe
six turnovers. He had 5 points. He was 2 of 12 from the floor in the second half, and had 6 turnovers. And so,
because he looked great in the first half.
Yeah, and there were times that I thought Newkirk really struggled with him until the last couple of minutes when he played fantastic against him. But that just getting more pressure on him. There was a play that they replayed where they ended up getting a lob where Devontae was out there and just kind of had his hands down and just wasn't giving enough pressure there to make some of those reads difficult. I thought McRoberts did a good job of getting. I hate to say deflections, but it's really what they were. So I thought that was a positive. And yeah, I mean, Maryland shot 51% from the field, or 52% from the field in the first half, 31% in the second half. So, hold the team to 31% shooting and 11 turnovers. It'll cover up a lot of blemishes that you may have. And this team, this IU team, as we know, certainly has some of those to deal with. So we'll, more defensive performances like that, though, can help that stuff go away. Before we get into anything else, you're listening to the Assembly Call IU postgame show. I'm Andy Bottoms here with Ryan Phillips, breaking down Indiana's 71-68 win against Maryland. Ryan, the other thing I wanted to kind of hit on was IU's performance in the second half. It truly was a tale of two halves. And IU didn't really shoot it all that well in the second half. But one thing that they did better was they took far fewer 3-pointers. They took 12 in the first half compared to just 6 in the second half.
Yeah,
really focused.
Second half too, for sure.
Yeah, only made one, of course, when they actually got better looks, but by McRoberts, of course. But yeah, I mean, I thought the shot distribution was a lot better. They got to the free throw line more. A little bit of that was getting fouled late in the game, but not all of it. 3 free throws in the first half to 13 in the second. Anything, I guess I'll ask you the same question. I mean, 9 turnovers, that part is obviously pretty ugly, but anything you felt like they tried to do differently in the second half offensively, or was it just a case of, just some kind of sloppy play at times, intermixed with a few nice passes and cuts here and there?
Well, I think the game got sloppy. I don't think it was necessarily IU getting sloppy. I think sometimes you get in a game like that where you're going up and down a little bit, and I think both teams got sloppy, and it's almost contagious. And I think that sort of happened. There were stretches in that game, and I didn't think it was consistent. I thought there were stretches in the game where it got real sloppy, and for both teams. And I think that sometimes guys just get carried away with that and sort of get everybody in the game gets loose with the ball. And I think we saw that happen to both teams for stretches. What I will say is I thought in the second half, what they did better was, they got 3 happy at one point in the first half. There was that stretch where I think it was like 5 or 6 threes in like 2 minutes, which is not this team's game. But guys got okay looks. They just were missing them. And we've seen that all year. So it's not necessarily about getting the open look. Sometimes you got to take the open look, especially if you're Zach McRoberts, because clearly he can hit them. But I think that what happened in the second half was they were just more disciplined in general. And I think the flow of the game at times made them more disciplined. There were the times where it got out of control and got up and down. And then there were times where, look, this game was within about 5 points the entire way. And so I think that put more pressure on the offensive possessions to be more crisp and better. And you weren't necessarily scoring, but you were getting at least decent shots part of the time. And, there were guys who were missing at the rim, too, a few times. So I think that they were getting decent offense, just not necessarily finishing it off. And I thought there was a lot of contact that went uncalled for stretches of the second half as well, which is going to affect your shot. You can complain. I know complaining about the officials stinks, but I think both teams have some stuff to complain about after this one. But if it's not getting called both ways, fine. I don't care as long as it's consistent. But that is going to affect your shot going up inside if you get your arm hit. And so I thought there was some of that. But also, just guys, I think there was a little bit of guys getting a little worn down, maybe playing, a few days after they played on Friday, in a game where they just got shellacked at Michigan State, and then playing a lot of minutes on a Monday is going to wear you out. So I thought that some legs went away too in the second half, and that was an issue. And in such a close game, you didn't really have a chance to spread around the minutes too much.
Yeah, about 11 minutes into the second half, I want to say. At that point, Johnson, Morgan, McRoberts, and Smith had all played the entire second half at that point. And those guys got some rest, but even, Johnson finished with 18 minutes, McRoberts 18, Morgan 19 in the second half, and Devontae Green played 15. So yeah, subbing was virtually non-existent there for a little while. I do think that was part of it. The other thing we probably should talk about before we take a break is Juwan Morgan. I mentioned him in the opening, but I'm not sure there's enough we could say about him in this game. So we'll just kind of circle back to him periodically as we go.
Hey, you know what? That's a guy who looks like he could play in the NBA. It'd be really funny if somebody had mentioned that before the season and been ridiculed for it.
Yeah, it's a real shame. No, I mean, jeez, just can't even give the guy some credit without giving yourself credit first. Good for you.
Not at all. It's so dirt right here. It's going off the shoulder.
Exactly. I mean, he was, it was obviously a question mark whether he was going to play. I'm watching Twitter and everybody talking about, well, I haven't seen him yet. He hasn't come out for warmups. Now he's out. He's stretching. I think he's going to play. He looks okay. He doesn't have a limp. He's not wearing a brace. And then, really the game started and he looked pretty good, was getting up off the floor for blocks. Had that kind of weird play in the first half where, apparently according to the referee, he just fell over on his own. But kind of got his leg tangled up and went down, and you're like, did he re-aggravate it? But he kind of came right back after that. And I think made a basket on the very next possession. And, just was a guy that IU could really rely on. I thought there were times I went away from him early in the second half, but really got back to him late when it mattered. But he, showed a lot of good patience in the post against some different defenders that Maryland threw at him. Took guys off the dribble, had a couple nice drives to the basket, had some good post moves, had a number of nice passes out of there. Looking at this scene, only seeing 2 block shots, I felt like he had more, chasing down plays on the break like a free safety and doing pretty much everything. I just thought he was, even take the circumstances out of it of not knowing that he was going to play, fantastic. And then you kind of add that on, and it was a really phenomenal performance from him.
Yeah, I mean, that's just what we've come to expect. And it's really funny because if you look at before the season, I think that we all expected him to be good, but not like this. And I mean, he's all Big Ten right now. He has to be, if he stays healthy, knock on wood. But just, he just dominates games. And you know what, the thing about him, and you hear people talk about this all the time, and I know, big fan of the show, Dan Dockich, says it sometimes, but he makes basketball look easy. He does. He just makes it easy on himself. He goes to the block, he gets the ball, and he works guys who aren't as good as him. That's easy. I mean, it's he knows he's better. He gets position, he gets the ball, and he just works guys into position and scores. And he, again, makes life easy for himself. Basketball's easy when you're shooting 4 feet from the hoop and you're more talented, bigger, more athletic than the guy guarding you. Or if you get it out on the perimeter and you're against a guy who can't stop you, just slowly dribble him to the hoop and score. And I really hope a guy like Deron Davis is watching him and watching how easy he makes it on himself to score in close, because he just outbodies everybody, outmuscles them, and then, makes the easy shot when he's got the opportunity, puts it off the glass, doesn't, try and do anything fancy. And it's so funny because what he's doing is completely not fancy. It's not, you're not watching it going like, oh man, that's physically impressive. He's playing good basketball, and it's that simple. And he, again, makes life so easy for himself. And you're starting to see some of that from Justin Smith as well. He knows he's super athletic. He knows he's got a lot of length. He just get the ball in the post and go up over somebody, and he's making shots. And it's just, it's clearly rubbing off on him. And I think that's a good thing for IU's future, but it's also great to watch Juwan Morgan just establish himself as one of the better players in the Big Ten right now.
Yeah, I mean, the other couple notes on him, he did lead the team with 4 assists. I thought he had some really nice passes out of the post where, they'd get it to him on the one side and somebody would cut from the other side of the floor toward the basket. There was a play that Justin Smith made. I think it was around that kind of really ragged stretch of the second half you were talking about. And IU finally settled down and actually ran some offense, and they got a layup from Justin Smith off a nice pass. I think that was off a pass from McRoberts actually, but to start the second half, there was a nice play where Justin cut down there. So I think, they're starting to play through, Juwan obviously can score and has scored well, but I think defenses, as they're starting to adjust him, they're also adjusting in the sense of IU's also able to adjust to defenses now, giving him more attention, and guys moving better off the ball are able to get some baskets as a result of that. And he's doing a nice job of finding them. I think that's something that's really come along with him in recent games.
Yeah, it's almost like playing in that zone offense that they ran where you just give him the ball and let everyone cut off him. Well, now they're doing that when they're not in the zone offense and just let him kind of work off of that. It reminds you a little bit of the Portland Trailblazers back in Bill Walton's day. Just give the big man the ball at the high post and let him make the passes. And I mean, it certainly works if you cut off of it and these guys are willing to cut hard and make moves off of it. I think that's really a good idea for Indiana to do that. You could use Colin Hartman in that situation too. He's just not been as great offensively as of late. So I think it's a great move by Archie to do that. Put the ball in your best player's hand and let him make some plays.
Yep, absolutely. Well, coming up on the Assembly Call, I'll point out tonight's meaningful moment you might have missed, and then we'll go inside the numbers. That's next here on the Assembly Call. Stick with us. You're listening to the Assembly Call IU postgame show. I'm Andy Bottoms here with Ryan Phillips, and we're breaking down IU's 71-68 victory over Maryland. And now it's time for tonight's meaningful moment that you might have missed. So I had to go back and kind of scramble somewhat late, knowing that I was gonna host. So I went back and tried to jot down a couple things. I've also done a good job of not reading this verbatim and not pulling a Ron Burgundy and reading this and saying I'm Jared Morris. So far so good on that. But as far as like moments from tonight, I think I know really doing a good job. I think there were a couple. There was one late in the first half where IU got down by 5, I think it was. And they've had a little 2-man game on the side where they dumped it into the post to Juwan, and then Robert Johnson stood out on the wing where, as we've established on the show, is his spot to shoot threes from. And so, it was really just those two guys on that side of the floor isolated. And again, you're kind of letting your two best players make a play when you really need one. So Juwan, gets the ball into him. Defense gives him the attention. He kicks it back out to Robert, and he knocks down a 3. And I think those guys, while Maryland obviously scored here, they scored 10 straight IU points toward the end of the first half that really let IU get back, take the lead into the break after starting the game really well and then struggling a little bit in the middle. I thought that was a big, kind of a big moment there. Not letting Maryland get up any more than 5 and really working together to get IU back in it. And then there was a stretch, I think it was in the second half, where McRoberts scored 5 straight. You guys talked about this after the Michigan State game. I think the guys on the Hoosier Network talked about that as well, about, McRoberts just has to look at the basket and be a threat to shoot and to score. And he certainly did that during that stretch. He made one drive and got fouled, made both free throws. And then very next possession, I think it was hit a 3, and he started running down the floor as soon as the shot left his hand, like he knew it was going in.
He definitely got the Steph Curry jog back going on.
Yeah. I didn't know whether it was that.
High, Zach. Keep the hand up high, Zach.
With a guy who's that reluctant to shoot, you always kind of wonder, like, is he taking off because he thinks it's going to miss and he doesn't want to get beat down the floor on defense, or is that confident that went in? I choose to say he was that confident that it went in. But that was a big stretch from him, and he almost made another 3 from the same spot in the second half. But those, what about that stretch from him, and maybe just talking about his overall performance tonight? What stood out to you?
Well, I mean, you got the McRoberts hustle, that you usually get, the dive on the floor thing. And he also, you see him pop up all over the stat sheet. Offensive rebound, 3 defensive rebounds, 3 assists, 3 steals. 7 points for him. I don't know. Is that a season high? It might be.
No, he had that one game where he came out and was like shooting all the time that he scored.
That's right.
I think that's
right. Yeah. But again, it's 2 of 4 from the field. One of those, and he also a couple times drove to the hoop and got fouled. It's like, great, Zach, keep doing it. If you get close to the basket, go. And you're out there, you might as well, especially when things aren't going well. And clearly he's got a 3-point stroke. I mean, as he was 1 of 2. I mean, Colin Hartman was 1 of 3, Juwan Morgan, 0 of 2. I mean, they have the green light to shoot, and McRoberts should too, because he's going to get left alone until he can prove he can make that. And you saw, especially late, Maryland was sagging really far off him to help everywhere else on the floor. And he was going to get good looks, and he's going to get good looks the rest of the year. He's got to start making them. And I know we have the hashtag Colin Hartman things, but I actually tweeted it out today, hashtag Zach McRoberts things. I think that he's starting to be that guy where he's in the starting lineup and he's affecting games. And I know he doesn't score a ton, and he's never going to be a 15-point a game man. But you know what? Those 7 points were all huge tonight. Would have been nice if he made his free throws late at the end of the game, but even just one, Zach, just make one, just one, and put the game away. But he wanted it to be close, and to have an exciting finish, I guess. So he missed them both. But I just. Yeah, I mean, I'm impressed with him. I think I'm consistently impressed with him. I do think that we were pretty hard on him the other day because you do need to shoot occasionally, or else you're a non-factor on offense completely, and the other team can just ignore you. So it was nice to see him get some shots up and work. He cuts really well, so it's nice to see him kind of get rewarded for those hard cuts. And when he does get rewarded, to put the shot up and make it. That was my perspective on him. I don't know if you had something different.
No, I thought there were times again in the first half when he did pass up open shots. It was a play where Juwan hit him with a nice pass cut into the basket, and he turned around and threw it back outside.
Yeah,
so I was a little bit
the typical Zach thing to do.
I was a little concerned that that was going to be how it would go. But yeah, that one stretch he got really aggressive, and I think, it doesn't mean he has to come out and fire up 5 or 6 threes a game, but I do think he has to. But he's also proven that he can shoot the ball relatively well, and so he's certainly not going to be asked to take contested looks because most of the shots he's going to get from the perimeter are not contested. I mean, what you were talking about at the end of the game, he's literally the only guy on one half of the floor at a certain point, and it was like he's going to have to shoot the ball. I think that was when Newkirk drove and actually got fouled. But I'm thinking McRoberts is going to have to be the one to take the shot because he's the guy who's the most open. But so I thought that was good from him in that stretch. I thought he did a nice job on Herter. He was really just overwhelmed, I think, by the physicality of Michigan State and Miles Bridges in that Michigan State game.
As was the rest of the team.
Yes. He was not alone, certainly, in that. But I thought he did a nice bounce back job. He really, Herter, I think, is the kind of guy a little bit taller that probably, Robert Johnson guarded some, but got a little bit of a size advantage over Robert. And I think that was kind of, if there's a, guy to draw up that McRoberts maybe is well suited to deal with, it's Herter. And Herter still got his points, but I thought McRoberts really made him work, particularly in the first half, frustrated him into a few turnovers in particular. And I thought played really well on that end. Any other moments or stretches of the game stand out to you when you kind of think back on the game?
I mean, it's got to be that offensive rebound, I think, for Juwan Morgan at the end where he gets the layup, and you mentioned it in the opening, but that's play of the game, and it eerily similar to what happened at the end of the Notre Dame game with Zach McRoberts doing the same thing, and finding Juwan Morgan for the layup. So I think that was really just he outworked people. That's all he did, was just work harder than his opponent. And it's as simple as that. And sometimes when you do that, good things happen. And I don't know. I just think that you got to give credit to Indiana for working harder than Maryland in a lot of phases of the game tonight.
Yep, I'd agree. You are listening to the Assembly Call IU postgame show. I'm Andy Bottoms here with Ryan Phillips, breaking down Indiana's 71-68 win over Maryland. And now it's time to go inside the numbers. I know we've hit on a few of these so far. I'll pick a couple, Ryan. I know I usually take too many of these and then don't leave very much for you. Turnovers we touched on a little bit. Maryland with 18 turnovers, that led to 20 IU points. 12 IU turnovers did lead to 14 Maryland points. So somewhat even there, but for a lot of the game, particularly early on, that was something that was keeping IU in the lead when Maryland was shooting the ball really well, because they had continued to turn the ball over with regularity. You touched on the rebounding, so I'll let you hit that again if you want. Bench points, this is actually an area that IU had really been consistently outperforming their opponents, and they got outscored 26-10 from the bench. Maryland got a good performance out of Nickens and Wiley off the bench. For them, they only played 8 guys as well, so neither team went super deep into the bench. That was certainly one. And the other thing for me, just to kind of underscore IU's defense, 8 blocks, 10 steals. I mean, 18 combined when you add those numbers up, I think is really impressive and speaks a lot to the activity level and the fight and some of the things that you were just talking about with Juwan and just trying to outwork somebody. I thought IU really scrapped and played really well for a team on a quick turnaround to come back after just getting smoked on the road. I thought those were positive signs that they were able to bounce back from a really difficult defensive performance and do so many things well on that end of the floor tonight. Any numbers, any comment on those, or any other numbers stick out to you?
Uh, I think that you touched on it. I think the rebounding is insane. To lose by 11 in the rebounding battle and win the game it's rare. I mean, usually whoever controls the glass. I mean, it's fine. You lose by the rebounding battle by 1 or 2. That's pretty even. But to lose by 11 and win the game is quite frankly impressive from Indiana. To find other ways to win and get hammered on the glass. I mean, they gave up 11 offensive rebounds, something that needs to be cleaned up. But at the same time, they found a way to win the game. And I thought it was with the steals, with the blocks, with, only turning it over 12 times compared to 18 for Maryland. I thought that it was great the way they were able to, though things didn't go perfectly on the stat sheet, they were able to find a way to pull out the game. So impressive from them. Just to again figure it out, find a way to win. And this is the team that we haven't necessarily seen just finding ways to win. I think that the team that was really good at that was 2 years ago when they won the Big Ten title. They found different ways to win games, and you have to sort of do that when you're when you're going through the Big Ten season. You're not going to win it with the same formula every single time. You've got to find ways to make things happen, and that's a great trait to see developing for Indiana.
Yeah, one other thing to touch on from a team standpoint was the 2-point shooting for IU. I mean, again, that continues to be something that they do really well, which for a team that is undersized, as you mentioned earlier, and really not routinely playing hardly anybody over 6'7". I think Justin Smith really might be the only guy who really fits that bill. They were 58% on twos in the game. And I think that's why that shot distribution in the second half was so important. They continued to, even though they didn't shoot the ball as well in the second half in total, I think they still ended up 50% on twos in the second half. And I think, there was that stretch that you mentioned in the first half where it was, pretty three happy, and they'd miss one to get an offensive rebound and kick it out and jack up another one. But I thought they really didn't let themselves, while the play was sloppy at times in the second half, they didn't let themselves get lulled into that, which I thought was a positive. On the individual side, something else that I noticed on here and was going to mention as one of the meaningful moments was Josh Newkirk with 3 blocks, and at least 2 of those came down the stretch. I mean, he had been saddled with foul trouble really most of the game. Certainly, came in for a couple of stretches in the second half, got called for 2 moving screens, one of which I think was legitimate, one of which I think the defender kind of baited the referee into calling. But he came back in and obviously playing with 4 fouls, and that hadn't been in the game very long, made a couple, and having struggled with Anthony Cowan quite a bit in the first half, he made a couple nice plays, made a block on one. I think he made a block on a fast break, drew an offensive foul on the other, really within all of the span of about a minute. I think blocked 2 shots and drew an offensive foul call from him. I thought that was a huge stretch from him, and probably would have been a good candidate for a meaningful moment you might have missed, although it was right in the thick of things there at the end. So that was a big number individually. And then Robert Johnson, again, 8 rebounds, all on the defensive end, led the team in rebounding. And while he didn't really shoot the ball very well in the second half, after a pretty solid first half, he continued to contribute on the glass. That's something that has really become consistent with
calling
him.
Card for him for sure. Yeah.
And so I think that was a big one. I didn't count up all the guard rebounds because that's been a big focus, but for a team that really struggled on the boards, I don't know if that's good or bad that one of your starting guards led the team with 8 rebounds.
I have a question. Are we counting Zach McRoberts as a guard when we count guard rebounds? I mean,
I'm trying to think. When the one night Archie was kind of listing it off, I don't know. I think he's maybe a guard forward. So you could. I think it's one of those where you can play with it statistically to make it say whatever you want it to say and go with it from there. Yeah. So any other individual numbers stand out for anybody from you?
Not really. I mean, Devontae Green, I thought actually played a pretty good game. 7 points, 3 rebounds, an assist, a steal, 2 blocks, as we mentioned earlier. He did have the 2 turnovers, but 3 of 8 from the field, 1 of 2 from 3. And I thought that the 3 he hit was big at the end of the first half to give Indiana a lead going into the break. Would like to see him. He had a really nice finish where he got fouled. I'd really like to see him make his free throws. I mean, that kind of has to be automatic for a guy his size and from what he brings. But I thought he was effectively aggressive tonight for the most part and not overdoing it. I mean, there's going to be the 1 or 2 Devontae plays, sort of the damn it Verdell moment for Devontae Green. But I thought that he had some really nice plays, some really nice passes as well. One of which led, I think, directly to a Juwan Morgan bucket. So I would say I thought that he had a nice game, and the numbers sort of reflect that.
Yeah, I want to talk more about him when we come back from the break. I thought it was a kind of a kind of textbook Devontae night in some regard. So I wanted to touch on him a little bit more. So we'll do that when we come back. So again, stick with us while we do that. We'll continue to talk about Devontae, maybe hit a couple other individuals that we wanted to talk about who really had big contributions in IU's 71-68 win over Maryland. That's next here on the Assembly Call. Stick with us. You're listening to the Assembly Call IU postgame show. Catch us live immediately following every IU basketball game and every Thursday night on our YouTube channel, youtube.com/assemblycall. You can also view all of our live broadcasts right on our homepage at assemblycall.com. I'm Andy Bottoms here with Ryan Phillips, and we are breaking down Indiana's 71-68 victory over Maryland. And Ryan, you touched on Devontae Green a little bit. I thought it was I guess I say uneven performance, but in some ways I feel like an uneven performance from him is like an even performance from other guys. I just thought there were times in the second half where he just went through a stretch of just making some really selfish plays. And then that was followed up almost immediately by him making that nice pass to Juwan that you talked about off as Juwan slipped to the basket. And then he played really good defense on Anthony Cowan, I think the very next possession. And it's one of those where it's like, why can't you do that all the time? Maybe that would take some of the allure off of his game, but he wouldn't
be as interesting. He's just trying to make himself interesting.
Yeah. Well, he's doing a hell of a job. He's 1 of 6 from the floor in the second half, but and had those 2 turnovers. And I thought some of the turnovers just like getting going too fast. Even the 3 he hit at the end of the first half was a big one. I think somebody tweeted out, Archie's calling out, something about what set they wanted to run, to kind of run, get the last shot of the half, or at least as the clock was winding down, and he just like looked at him and then just fires up a 3. And so, it was funny. My 6-year-old daughter sitting next to me, and I was like, that really wasn't a great decision. And she goes, well, it went in. So
yeah, no,
like, that kind of sums him up, I would say in general. But
it's really funny. As we're talking about this, my dad just texted me and said, Green is Troy Williams revisited. I can't really argue with that right now.
But that checks out.
That checks out. Yeah, no, it does. Look, for the most part, I was fine with the way Devontae played, but yeah, he has Devontae moments. I mean, and it's unfortunate that a Devontae moment is defined as what it is, where you're just kind of like, what are you doing? But as I told my high school coach, every time I took a bad shot, if it goes in, you have nothing to complain about. And that 3 went in. So clearly he's got that confidence going. He really isn't shy. I know we can say that, but I think that, I think that there is so much there potential wise with him that you kind of live with it for now and hope that he's kind of figuring it out. He played 19 minutes tonight, handled the ball a lot. He did have 2 turnovers, but again, on like Newkirk, on one of those turnovers, he forced a turnover on the way back to stop it. So I think you'll live with it. I think you'll live with the way he's playing right now if he continues on this path. And I think that he's getting better. But of course, as soon as I think that he's getting better, he has a real dog of a game. So we'll see how this goes. But I'm putting my faith in Devontae. I think he's going to continue to get better. I think he's going to be a key contributor.
Yeah, I mean, at the very least tonight, he was able to give them a lot of minutes in the second half when they really needed it with Newkirk out with foul trouble. Yeah. He tried. I think he got frustrated. I think Archie got frustrated with Devontae for a stretch early in the second half after he had just come in for Newkirk, and then he put Al Durham in, and I think he committed 2 turnovers within a minute, and he took him right back out. And so if nothing else, Devontae was at least able to kind of hold down those minutes because there really wasn't any place else to turn at that point. And in that regard, I thought he played well and made a couple really nice plays. And it's just, those are kind of sandwiched between some head scratchers, but you take the good with the bad, I guess. I wanted to talk about the other 2 individuals were really guys who, along with Juwan Morgan, shouldered the load in the first half. And that was, Justin Smith and Robert Johnson. Justin had 8 points in the first half, made all 4 of his shots. I think made his first shot of the second half as well, and finished with 12 points and only 1 rebound. I think if there's something to kind of to call out for him, that would be it. But 12 points on 6 of 8 shooting in 21 minutes was really solid. And like I said, he played those first, I think 11 or 12 minutes of the second half, and I'm not sure that he came back in after that point. But I think a good. I think we kind of look at Justin Smith a little bit with the extremes of the Minnesota game and then the Penn State game that followed it up. I think what you saw tonight from Justin, I think, is a good, ideally a good middle ground where if he lived in the 8 to 12 point area and maybe tack on a couple rebounds, I think that would be a huge lift for IU.
Yeah, I mean, he had 12 points and 1 rebound and a block, no turnovers in 21 minutes. That's a nice night for a freshman. It really is. I mean, look, if you're a freshman lottery pick, that's not a great night for you. But for Justin Smith, for a guy at his level, that's really good, and that's a good night in the Big Ten. And no, only he had the 2 personal fouls. Didn't get himself in foul trouble. Guarded without using his hands. Guarded with his feet. And he's a guy who has enough length and athleticism to affect shots without getting blocks. And so I saw him do that a few times tonight, where it's just he's in there. He's a decently sized guy, and he's not a pushover defensively. You have to account for him. So I liked what he brought. And yeah, I was happy to see him out there. I thought he really held his own, and it allowed his presence allows Colin Hartman to come off the bench and provide some leadership.
Yeah, I thought Hartman was another one where he came in really, fired up a number of threes early in the first half, and then I don't think he shot at all when he came in the second half. But I would argue in some ways was actually just as, if not more effective in the second half when he played. I think he played those last 9 minutes. Yeah,
I thought he was far better in the second half than the first half.
Yeah, which is kind of funny to say about a guy who didn't take a shot, but I mean, he made, I think, his first three when he came into the game, but a couple of the others just seemed a little bit forced. And somebody tweeted out that he had kind of visibly been frustrated with shots not going in against Michigan State, and I think he's probably a better shooter than what he's shown in recent games. But I thought he played well when he came in that second half, and really he and Justin combined to play 20 minutes at that other forward spot in the second half. I thought they both, combined, did a nice job. But yeah, I agree that he played better in the second half. Grabbed 3 rebounds, and I just thought played a little bit smarter. Was in the right spots defensively, and did a nice job
for the most. But yeah, I mean, he got beat on some closeouts, but a lot of that is just really nice job by Maryland recognizing the open guy and finding him. And it is really hard to close out in some of those situations, but he did get caught up in traffic a few times on his closeouts, which led to some open looks. But other than that, I couldn't really complain about him defensively. He was in the mix. And I think his presence on the floor gets those guys diving, for balls and, going out of bounds for balls and all that stuff. So you got to like when he's on the floor. And also you just see guys running the offense more smoothly when he's out there. So, even when he doesn't put up numbers, you notice that things run more smoothly when he is on the floor.
Yep. You are listening to the Assembly Call IU postgame show. I'm Andy Bottoms here with Ryan Phillips, breaking down Indiana's 71-68 win over Maryland. And Robert Johnson was the only other guy that I really wanted to touch on. I thought played really well in the first half, 10 points, made a couple threes, had 10 points and 6 rebounds in the first half, 1 assist, no turnovers. And played 17 minutes. I thought the second half, forced a couple shots, did make, one layup off kind of a scramble play that was a big bucket down the stretch, and grabbed a couple rebounds. I thought it was interesting, and I don't know whether this was by design or not. Defensively, he started out the game on Morcell, I believe, and then he seemed to play Herter a little bit more in the second half. And I don't know. I can speculate that it was a case of, we can't afford for him to get in foul trouble as he did early in that Michigan State game. And do you put him on a little bit less of an offensive threat in the first half? And, he's a guy who's typically been on, one of the opposition's better scorers, for most games. So I don't know if there's any validity to that argument as to why, Archie did that and why the matchup shook out how they did. But I thought that was, kind of interesting. And it worked in the sense that he was able to play, 35 plus minutes over the course of the game by not getting himself into foul trouble. He ended up playing 35 with 3 fouls in total, all of which he picked up in the second half. So I don't know if there's any validity to that or if you think that's a harebrained theory, but any other lingering thoughts on Robert?
No, I mean, I thought he had a nice game. I thought the first half, of course, was better than the second half. He hit some threes early on that really helped the team, but his 8 rebounds were a key. I mean, they were a big deal. And we've talked about guard rebounds with this team, and he really stepped up and grabbed some keyboards. And I thought, tried to get IU out in transition. They didn't necessarily convert all the time, but he really tried to get them out in transition and moving the ball up and down the floor, which, takes pressure off the half court offense. which is important. And I think, but I do think at times he still has those flashbacks to last year where if he has even a hair of room, he's going to take a three. And it, hasn't been working out for him this year, but his shot does look like it's getting better. So that's a key for Indiana moving forward. He's got to be able to contribute. And 12 points tonight was fine, given that it was only a 71-point game. But I felt like in the second half, he did disappear for stretches. So it'd be nice to see him put in a more consistent 40-minute effort.
Yeah, so one of the other things Archie mentioned this in the post game about the crowd the last 6 to 8 minutes, and I thought the crowd impacted the game a lot. Then there were some looked pretty empty, quite honestly, toward the beginning of the game. I don't know whether that's nighttime classes. Obviously, 37 has been problematic for people to be able to get to the games, but I thought eventually the crowd really had an impact on the game. I think part of it was largely just rage induced in by the officials, but whatever it takes, I guess, to get to that point. But I did think the crowd really got into it at that point, but it was one of those where it was a slow burn to get to that point. And like I said, I'm not sure that without some of the officiating, I don't know that anybody would have been quite as enthusiastic as they were as they ended up being.
Agreed. I think that it was kind of embarrassing, considering it's a home game at Indiana, in the middle of Big Ten season. I just thought the crowd wasn't, there were moments where the crowd was good, but there weren't long stretches where it was, deafening to the point where it affects the game. And then you figure late, I think finally you got some, reason to yell, and that was the officiating. And then that really sparked Indiana. When they got loud, it sparked Indiana, and that tends to happen. But it'd be nice if it was more consistent. So I'd really like to see more fans getting into these games and showing up. I mean, come on, it's a Monday night in December, or in January. What do you got going on that's better than that than a game at Assembly Hall?
I can't
skip. You have class. Skip class. I mean,
it's really early in the semester, so
seriously,
you get behind, the more time you have to catch up. So
I mean, it's remember that you're barely a few weeks past syllabus day. You're fine at this point.
All right,
you're not paying for it. Your parents are paying for it.
There we go.
Go to those games.
All right, coming up in our final segment of this edition of the Assembly Call, we'll hand out our game balls, look ahead to Indiana's next opponent, and then deliver our final thoughts on Indiana's 71-68 win over Maryland in last call. That's next here on the Assembly Call. Stick with us. You're listening to the Assembly Call IU postgame show. I'm Andy Bottoms here with Ryan Phillips, and we are wrapping up our breakdown of IU's 71-68 victory over Maryland. And so we'll start this off with our game balls. I would imagine that there's a seemingly obvious choice, and so Ryan, I will let you go first, and if you want to swoop in on that obvious choice, you are more than welcome to do so.
We're allowed to take the same guy.
I know we are. So no matter what you do, I know who I'm taking. So who are you giving yours to tonight?
I'm going to give it to Zach McRoberts for taking 2 3-pointers. I think that was a big deal from him. No, I do give it to Zach because I think that we've come to expect 25 and 5 from Juwan. I mean, he was clearly the best player on the floor. But if I'm handing my game ball out, I'm going to Zach McRoberts, who turned in 31 minutes for a walk-on, 4 rebounds, 3 assists, 3 steals, and 7 points, including flushing a 3 at one point from the corner, and hit a couple free throws. I like what he's doing on the floor, and I thought he played pretty well defensively too. I just like the way he brings it on the floor, and I thought he was very keen. I thought his energy was key, particularly in those stretches where things got out of control and guys were on the floor going after the basketball. He was the first guy down, and he was selling out to get the ball. So while Morgan obviously was the best player in the game, I think that without McRoberts' contribution, Indiana loses this game at home, and you can't have that in the Big Ten.
Yeah, I think the one thing you see him really starting to bring, and this is not just specific to him, but I used to be able to go with the same lineup these past few games, and those guys have played. At least a good chunk of those guys have played quite a bit together. So I think you're starting to see some good, chemistry and cohesion between, particularly between he and Morgan up front.
Yeah.
Given that he's kind of playing that forward position, which I think is obviously a good thing to see. But I think there's just, they're getting used to playing with one another in these games, and they, the guys talk about how they, want to be on his team and, Zach's team in practices and things like that. But I think you start to see some of that cohesion really builds up and has been a positive. I'm going to go with Juwan Morgan. I'm not going to try to get too cute with things here. I mean, did a little bit of everything. And I think I saw a quote from McRoberts that said something to that effect, that he's a little bit of everything for us. 25 points, 4 rebounds, 4 assists, or 25 points, 5 rebounds, 4 assists, 2 blocks, 2 steals, and played 36 minutes on an ankle that he said as of Saturday he didn't think he'd be able to play on. So I think a fairly easy call to go with him. I like your selection of McRoberts, but I'm going to go with Juwan. I think we've talked a lot about him. You know, when I get it. When I use playing through him, good things happen and consistently have happened. And so awesome to see him. And he's got another really quick turnaround again. So hopefully he can get some more treatment. We know with Tim Garl, he'll be in good hands, but he'll get some more treatment on that here in the next couple of days, because another quick turnaround awaits IU with the Illinois game coming up on Wednesday. And so, you know, you look ahead to that game a little bit. Illinois right now 0-7 in the league. Playing Michigan State as we record this now, down 5 late in the first half. But they've played a lot of close games. There haven't been a ton of these where they have really gotten blown off the floor. You know, lost 3 of them in overtime. You know, 1-point game to Nebraska. Wisconsin, you know, did just beat them pretty good on the road, but particularly in the home games, they've been pretty competitive, and they haven't had a lot of home games. Quite honestly, they've really only, if this is correct, as I'm looking down here, they've only played 2 conference home games, one against Maryland, and one against Iowa, and they lost both those in overtime. So while on paper probably looks like, oh, it's a winless team that you're going into, you know, they've continued to fight pretty well, and certainly I think they'll be ready in a place where IU has not played well, when IU teams have been much better than this one is. So I think that'll be more a challenge, I think, than you know, people may give it. I think Ken Pom right now predicts this as an Illinois victory, actually. So for whatever that's worth, you know, gives Illinois a 40, or gives IU a 40% chance of victory. So certainly not a gimme, given the quick turnaround on these games and things like that. You know, if you look at Illinois statistically, they really want to play fast. I think that's going to be important as you look at tempo in this game. If they suck IU into playing their pace, that could be challenging.
Yeah, so, that's not Indiana's game anymore.
No. It most certainly is not. And I think that's where, you know, if IU gets into an up and down, you know, jacking threes type of scenario, I don't know that that's going to go all that well for IU. Now, that being said, what Illinois, you know, really the only good thing that Illinois has done defensively, particularly in conference plays, they're second in turnover rate, at least as I look at this right now. IU is actually first, but they're, you know, pretty close. Otherwise, you know, they've given up. You know, they're Illinois' last in 2-point defense. That's going to be a big one for IU. So I think if IU can really take care of the ball, not get sucked into the pace that Illinois wants to play, I think they have a good chance to pick up a road win, which, you know, would really be big for them. And if you kind of think of this, I talked on, I think, Assembly Call Radio last week about playing these in 3-game segments. You know, IU's 1-1 in this segment. Can you win this 3-game stretch and go 2-1? So I think as you look at, you know, road games, seems like one of the more winnable ones that there is. Whether they're able to do that on a quick turnaround will remain to be seen. But we'll be back here to talk about it. I think that's a 9:00 tip. I am not sure what channel it's on, but it is 9:00 on Wednesday. So we'll be back.
And look, hey, Indiana's won 4 of 5 and 7 of 9. I mean, they're playing better. They are. And look, it hasn't been the most challenging stretch of the season, but they're playing pretty well, and they're playing well enough to win. So you hope that they can just continue that and continue to build on that every time out, pretty much.
Yeah, and hopefully the win at Minnesota is something that they're able to, you know, look back on and gain some confidence from going into a road environment that they haven't played well in. Because if they can win at the barn, then, you know, maybe they can win at the other assembly hall.
I keep doing that too. Don't worry.
It's close. It's doing so well. All right. Well, you are listening to the Assembly Call IU postgame show. Remember that because you're an Assembly Call listener, you get 15% off of your entire order at HoosierProud.com. So if you want officially licensed IU gear, one of our Assembly Call logo t-shirts, or one of Hoosier Proud's unique Indiana-inspired designs, visit HoosierProud.com and use the promo code Assembly at checkout. That's HoosierProud.com, promo code Assembly for 15% off your entire order. I'm Andy Bottoms here with Ryan Phillips, and it's time for our last call after tonight's win over Maryland. So, Ryan, what's your last call in this game?
You know, I just think it's a good win. I mean, it doesn't, you know, Maryland's not ranked. They're not, you know, a world beater, but it's a good win to get at home. Top 40 team in Ken Pom, who will probably drop significantly now after losing to IU. But I just thought that Indiana battled, and there were a lot of opportunities for them, and we said that this year during some of their wins, there were a lot of opportunities to fold where things weren't going Indiana's way, and they refused to do so, and they battled back and won the game. And while that's not necessarily the formula you always want to use, it was a solid performance by Indiana to do it and to get things right and to win it. And again, you just got to tip your hat to Juwan Morgan, a guy who clearly isn't 100%, but 25 points, 5 rebounds, 4 assists, 2 steals, 2 blocks in 36 minutes, 10 of 18 from the field. You just got to give the guy credit. I mean, he is playing as well as anybody in the Big Ten right now, save maybe Miles Bridges. And numbers wise, he may actually be right there with Miles. I haven't checked in a while, but it's he's just turning into a guy who can be a rock for a program, and a guy that's kind of what I hoped he'd become coming out of high school, and it's really great to see him blossom that way. Hopefully he's healthy and continues to stay healthy and can be back on Wednesday feeling good.
Yeah, I mean, for me, like I said, I kind of looked at this last stretch of the season, and in like 4 3-game segments, and so the Michigan State game obviously was a difficult one, that they you know didn't play well against in a really tough environment. Just ran into a buzzsaw, but I thought bounced back nicely tonight. Really played tough. This team is not going to win a lot of games where you're like, man, that was really pretty. And I think this the second half of this game in particular was kind of a slog, but IU really they made it that way to a certain extent by playing really good defense. And I thought they made some good adjustments and really came out with a renewed focus defensively in the second half. And that's what this team is going to have to do. And that's the same thing that's going to hopefully travel with them as they try to win, another road game in the league. They're, 5-3 right now, chance to go to 6-3 at the halfway point of Big Ten play. And I think, again, while in a lot of these cases, you'd probably say maybe the wins or the losses didn't necessarily come against who you thought they would come to. If you told somebody that at the midway point, this team was 6-3, I think you'd feel pretty good about it. So a big opportunity for these guys to build on, some of the momentum that they had. Took a little bit of a step back in that Michigan State game, but I think, as you said, have won 4 or 5 and hopefully can continue that momentum. A quick turnaround. I think they're going to need more from the bench to be able to expect some of these guys to play close to 40 minutes again. I think it's going to be a little bit of a stretch with the third game in in 6 days. I think will be challenging. So be looking for some guys to step up off the bench. Newkirk should be pretty well rested after being in foul trouble a decent amount of this one. And so, looking forward to another good game on Wednesday. And so we'll be back after that game. Again, that's a 9:00 Eastern start on the road at Illinois. So we'll be here for that. We'll be back on Thursday for Assembly Call Radio, and then we'll take a couple days off for that Purdue game over the weekend. So a busy stretch for IU, busy stretch for us, but we look forward to bringing it all to all of you. So that will do it for this edition of the Assembly Call IU postgame show. Remember that our live broadcasts immediately following every IU game are always available on our homepage at assemblycall.com and on our YouTube channel, youtube.com/assemblycall. And you can always catch up on demand anytime with our podcast. Just search for Assembly Call wherever you listen to podcasts. Don't forget to go to assemblycall.com/join to join our free email newsletter. Thank you for listening. We'll talk to you again tomorrow night, or not tomorrow night, but Wednesday night after the Illinois game, and then again on Thursday for Assembly Call Radio. Until then, keep your elbows in and your eyes on the rim, and go Hoosiers.